Okay, hello everyone. Everyone that's joined already. And welcome to the BAME WeTeach Black Youth panel. We're streaming live on obviously Twitter and YouTube. Please share. We'll just give it a couple of minutes whilst people are still joining. I'm really excited about this event. Currently, we've got 5 young black men who are going to share their experiences, answer questions that have been submitted already via our Eventbrite link or submitted to us via DMs or comments. If you do have any questions, please do comment. Obviously, we can see your comments that are coming through now. We also have 3 brilliant guest speakers who are with us, and they will be sharing their work that they do and providing actionable points for you to take forwards and hopefully implement in your work, or ways to support the work that they're doing to either decolonize the curriculum or improve diversity, promote Black history within education. I'm going to aim to try and start as promptly as possible, so I'll just give it another minute before I introduce the panel. Please use the hashtag Black Youth Panel if you to start any conversations. So it's hashtag Black Youth Panel. And there will be a designated time at the end before we finish the live, where we'll be specifically looking at questions that are given during the stream. So if you do have any questions, do obviously comment them, and then we'll see them. And there'll be a specific time at the end where we'll be looking at those questions if there are any. Okay, so without any further ado, I'm going to introduce the panel. I'm really excited to introduce these young men that are doing fantastic things and have various experiences within education, but positive, loads of positive, and obviously some not so great as well, which is why we're here and we're sharing their experiences, and it's a platform and it's meant to be a safe space. So on that note, I just encourage you to be aware of the questions that you're asking, be aware of the comments that you're making, because obviously some of these experiences are real life experiences. They are real life experiences. They are authentic. They are the personal experiences of these young men. So please just be aware of the comments you're making. Please try to refrain from challenging their views, opinions, etc. Firstly, I introduce to you Mr. Adeyemi, who's joining us. Alex, introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name's Alex. I'm 19 years old. So after my A-levels, I took a gap year, and I plan to study economics at university in September. I'm currently a summer intern at a wealth management firm, and I've had quite a contrast in educational experiences. I spent the first 15 years of my life in Southeast London, going to a secondary school in Brixton, and then for the past around like 4 or 5 years, it's actually been in Kent. So yeah, I look forward to sharing my experience with you.
Thank you, Alex. Next, I bring to you Mr. Kumi Odesanya.
Hi, so my name is Kumi Odesanya. I study financial economics at University of Leicester. I'm going into my second year. Similarly to Alex, I used to live in South London, Brixton, but I moved in 2017 to Kent. So I've had quite a contrast as well in terms of my racial experiences within education. I'm looking forward to sharing with you.
Thank you, Kumi. Next, I bring to you Tyrone Kudua. Tyrone, you're currently on mute.
Hi, my name is Tyrone Codwell. I'm 19 years old and I'm currently studying economics and international development at the University of Sussex. I've been studying in London since I was young, and I'm also the president of the Afro-Caribbean Society at my uni.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tyrone. I bring to you next Mr. Mohammed Bar.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Bar. I'm currently going into my second year of uni. Through secondary school, I went to a predominantly black community school. So I'm looking forward to help with answering questions and sharing my experience.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mo. And finally, but not least, I bring to you Josh Adeyemi.
Hi, I'm Josh, 19 as well. Growing up in South London all of my life, essentially. I currently study human, social, and political sciences. I Cambridge, just finished my first year, and I plan to specialize in international. At the age of 16, after finishing at a state school in South London, I won a scholarship to Eton. So you can imagine the demographic was very different, but I definitely enjoy my time there, and I look forward to sharing more about my educational experiences.
All right, brilliant. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. So here we have our Black Youth panel. You may notice it's a male panel, and I have had questions about why there are no females on the panel. We do plan on continuing this into a 3-part series where the next panel will be a female-based panel and sharing female experiences within education, and then finalizing with a variety of guest speakers, providing sort of a call to action type response. So here we have our Black Youth panel, which is obviously male based. We're just going to start off with discussion. We done a survey for Black youth in education, and we're just going to start off with some of the results of that survey. So firstly, 69.2% of the Black youth that were involved in the survey said that they felt valued within education. And what I noticed, we noticed trends, and a lot of the trend was to say that the students who felt valued tended to have more Black teachers involved in the education. What would you guys say on this? So we'll start off with Josh. What would you say in terms of your experiences, you feeling valued, and do you think the amount you felt valued was linked to the teachers that you had around you and them being of color?
I feel like having teachers of color, particularly Black teachers, definitely sort of added a certain level of relatability, in the sense that would have been ones that they would have been able to kind of, in a sense, sort of share with you as a young Black man. I'm talking about certain lived experiences, such as being discriminated and being more likely, well, in London, those certain shared experiences would have often formed certain bonds that would have gone beyond the classroom, in a sense. But I definitely don't necessarily feel that it's purely a case where you need to have a teacher needs to be of color to be able to relate with you on a level. I think it's more so the kind of just the way you're treated, and if you feel respected by the teacher, it's, you know, you're more likely to kind of form a positive relationship rather than a teacher who you feel that you're always in conflict with.
Definitely, thank you. So what was a great point from yourself is that it doesn't have to be teachers of color or Black teachers that are forming bonds with Black students. Teachers of all races can form bonds with all students. Just it depends on the level of respect and sort of conversing and just getting to know students. Would anyone else like to develop that? Go on, Alex.
So I feel like Also, with black teachers, you get that sort of relatability aspects that you can't really get with teachers of other demographics. In my own personal experience, I felt obviously most valued with my black teachers because they sort of understand all the social and like even political aspects that go around being black, and they can sort of appreciate the steps that I've taken as a young black student to be where I am today. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Before I move on, would anyone else like to comment on that? No? Perfect. All right, so just in line with that, before moving on, so the students, they black youth involved in the survey commented that when they felt valued, it was due to support that they was given. So the support was given for them to aim high. They saw themselves as smart. So when people see them as smart, they tended to do better within education, and they went to predominantly black secondary schools, so their experiences were more positive because they were in an environment where they wasn't necessarily the minority. 61.5% of the students felt that they'd been treated unfairly due to the color of their skin at some point within their educational experiences. One student commented that their predicted grades were being biased, were based on bias, and they actually achieved a lot higher than their predicted grades. Have you felt that the color of your skin has affected you in education negatively in any way? We'll start with Tyrone.
Me personally, I went to a state school, so I went to a public school in Peckham, which the students were predominantly black. So I never really actually felt that the color of my skin prevented me from actually achieving the highest goals or trying to get to where I wanted to be in the future, because I actually had people like me who came up from the same background as me to actually help and support me. Same with the teachers around me, because most of them were black. They were actually able to put me in the right direction, put me on the right course, which actually helped me to become someone in the future, someone successful, someone who's actually got ambition.
Brilliant, thank you. What about yourself, Kumi?
I'd say during sixth form, I tried to not think like that at times, but there will be times where I'd be working really, really hard. Like I didn't feel very comfortable in my school anyways, due to the drastic change of demographics. But I felt like I was working really hard, and I felt at times my work was being undermined, and I was thinking, why is my work being undermined? Why am I predicted lower than this person when I clearly work harder than them? So at times I did feel like maybe it is the color of my skin, but if I felt like that, I remember someone telling me that's a sort of victim mentality to have, and that's not the right way to go about things. So, but at the end of the day, really and truly, I will never know. But deep down, I do feel like it was because of the color of my skin. I'll be real with you.
Okay. And Josh, would you like to add, or Mo?
I mean, personally, I feel like I've been quite lucky to not necessarily have been sort of underpredicted in any way, to the best of my belief anyways. I've always kind of felt like I've sort of worked really hard for the most part in education, and that's sort of been picked up by teachers, etc. So I feel like I've been sort of fairly kind of when it comes to predicting a system in place, which is having to predict students' grades. I do feel like that's going to negatively impact BAME students, particularly black boys who are often underpredicted. So I definitely do feel like that's a huge problem.
And finally, Mo, would you like to add anything?
Me specifically, as I said before, the majority of people in my school during secondary school were black, so I didn't come across anything racist. There were a lot of black teachers as well, but a few of my friends from other schools who are black have told me their personal experiences through the color of their skin, sorry. And the advice I always just give them is to focus and keep going on for their goal and keep striving.
Okay, thank you. And so far, just to comment on, a lot of the responses have been sort of linked to secondary experiences. So just be aware that you can sort of explore further. So whether it's primary, if you can remember that far back, or your current studies at university. So just bear that in mind for the obviously future questions. And then just before we move on to our first guest speaker, we finally asked what a couple of within the survey what being black means to these young people. And I've just got a couple of comments to read from the survey. So one young person said that being black means being a powerful being, knowledgeable and beautiful to them. Another said that it means coming from struggle and becoming great against all odds. Another said working twice as hard for achievements in whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in education, being strong, resilient, as there are many struggles in life, having to look beyond the obstacles to pursue our goals. And finally, one person said being black means being judged based on the color of your skin, working twice as hard in comparison to white counterparts to be treated equally, and being given a sense of pride and respect, knowing our history and we're still going strong. And I'd just like to end on what being black means to you guys. So what does being black mean to you, Alex? If you could just summarize quickly before we move on to our first speaker.
Yeah, kind of related to what a lot of the responses there. So I feel like being black to me is kind of working twice as hard to get the same results as my white counterparts, but it also gives me that sort of sense of pride and the sort of courage that sort of goes with that. So yeah.
Brilliant. What about yourself, Kumi?
Yeah, I couldn't have said any better myself, to be honest, from what was said. Like, that's what I've always heard in my life, and I felt it as well. I felt like being black to me is working twice as hard to get what I want in this life, because I feel like there is a privilege for white people in society, something that I didn't want to believe, but I've had to just accept as I was growing up. So yeah.
Okay, and then what about yourself, Josh?
Being black is something that I'm proud of and I'll always be. It's something that I know will come with challenges purely based on how political the black experience is. Being black is being in a perpetual in a state of perpetual suspicion by society, generally speaking. But being black also is something that I just feel something that I always cherish, and something that I know many others take from and exploit, but don't give the credit to the black community for.
Okay, thank you.
Or enough credit.
Thank you. And Mohammed?
I definitely agree with all the responses that have come through. I definitely think being black is being able to strive for what we want as a community, because the community has been based on the society of black men and white men, from the history, and it's been going like that since. If you look at all the history that's happened, and I think it still continues to happen. So I think we have to strive harder as a community and work together towards the same goal.
And then finally, Tyrone.
Being black is similar to what everyone said, of course, like striving towards your goal, even knowing that your skin color is there. You should actually ignore the fact that that's there, and actually use that as motivation to actually push us to actually drive towards our goals so that we can succeed. So in a sense, just working harder than everyone else.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you guys. Obviously, we're gonna head to our first guest speaker, which is Canis. So we'll come back to you guys with our first set of questions from obviously the people who have registered via Eventbrite. So I'm gonna remove you from the stream now, and then I'm gonna introduce Canis. I want to welcome back the U panel, where we would go through our first set of questions. Okay, welcome back, guys. I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to put our first question. So we've got quite a lot of questions. We probably won't have time to get through everything, but I'm going to start off with this one here. So I'm going to start off with, how do you think your experience in education has shaped you? I think it's a nice way to start. Does anyone want to volunteer and go first? Anyone want to put themselves out there?
Yeah, I'll take this one.
All right, go on then, Alex.
Yeah, so I definitely feel like my experience in education has made me resilient, especially towards the later end. I'm only 19, but during sixth form, when I was in a predominantly white, actually female-dominated school, and I sort of had to go through them microaggressions with students and teachers, and an important thing actually there was specifically with predicted grades, and I know we sort of touched on that earlier on. I know Kumi can relate to that, but how we really had to fight to be seen as equal. And it's crazy because I'll give you a specific example with economics. For example, I sort of got predicted one of the lowest grades in my class, and I remember having that conversation with my teacher, like, miss, like, I've produced these essays, like I really do feel like I can get this grade, even comparing to like mock results and things like that, and how I really wasn't viewed on the same level as the other counterparts who I actually did actually end up scoring higher than in the raw exams. So it really did help build my character in terms of resilience.
All right, thank you. Kumi, do you wanna lead on from that?
Literally, if I could copy and paste what Alex just said, more or less the same. Like, because we had similar experiences moving from South London to grammar school for sixth form, right? Especially that it was quite dominated by that of white people. I'd say that I had a very similar experience. I feel like it made me more resilient, diligent, but however, it did reduce my self-confidence greatly, because there was times when I was just working so hard. I was just thinking, I wasn't like, it was like it wasn't getting recognized by my teachers, like low predicted grades. I was just thinking, like, wow, is there something wrong with me? Like, is there something actually wrong with me? What am I doing wrong all the time? Like, why am I not getting these same predicted grades as these guys? Like, why am I not being allowed on these same school trips? Why am I not being given the extra help then if I'm doing something so wrong? Like, so it's quite damaging mentally. I can't lie to you. It makes you have to take. It made me a lot stronger. Like, I feel like if I didn't go to grammar school for sixth form, I feel like I would have been more complacent with my studies as well. Like, having to work twice as hard as I said before is something that was a consequence of going to grammar school for sixth form. And yeah, that's my experience.
Add to that quickly.
Go ahead.
So I feel like having parents who are obviously immigrants, they've had to endure, greater struggles than we did. And when I sort of spoke to my parents, I remember vividly telling my mum about my experiences. She sort of had that get on with it mentality. And I think through that, I sort of had to sort of suppress those sort of issues that I went through. And, I tried to ignore them. But then it got to a point where, I sort of had to accept it. And I had to go through that challenging process of accepting that there is a problem. And I feel like with accepting that, because Kumi knows me, I'm sort of a headstrong person. I'll be like, I just need to work 3 times as hard because I was working twice as hard. But when I sort of had to accept that internally, it did help me sort of address them sort of issues, and yeah, it did help me push myself even more. It's ridiculous, but yeah.
Literally.
I understand. Like, there is definitely sort of an element of survival within the Black community, especially when it comes to education, in terms of you have to sort of work harder, you have to get on with it. And it just links back to what Esther was saying, representing Canis, that is now more than ever, it's important for parents to get involved and engage in their child's education and understand that there are certain things that are just not right and they shouldn't be happening. So and it's good that you actually started to have that conversation, and more people need to be open to having that conversation with their parents or parents with their children, and sort of being involved in their child's education, because some of the stuff that is occurring is damaging, as Kumi was saying. It can be quite damaging to your mental health and your just how you view yourself and your ability within education. But I'll move on to let's go Tyrone.
So my experiences in education has made me the man I am today, due to the fact that in education, you're not always going to get what you think you're going to get. So like, the teachers are going to be there, but you don't actually know if they're there generally to help you out or they want to see you succeed. That's only for you to determine for yourself, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So it's up to you, the individual, to actually figure out that mindset, to have that work extra hard mentality in a sense. So to be diligent, to actually be more self-disciplined. I think that's where education kind of taught me down the road, I would say, just to make me the man I am today, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Makes perfect sense. Mohammed, do you want to go? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I said I think I'll let Josh go because I think I've got the least to say about in terms
Okay,
of
go on.
answering this question.
Yeah, no worries. Go on, Josh.
So I remember growing up, probably from like year 7 to year 9, my behavior wasn't always the best, and I remember my mum always used to sort of get phone calls from school saying, like Josh is misbehaving again. It was always low level stuff, but you know, it eventually sort of added up. And I remember one parent scene specifically where I think it was my math teacher essentially told my mum that, you know, he's a very bright boy, but you know, if only he focused more in class and didn't disrupt the learning, he'd, you know, excel in school. And you know, my mum just kind of giving me that look. I feel like it really sort of touched me deep down, knowing all the sacrifices that, you know, she'd made in order for me to sort of, well, for one, like be in this country, and also to benefit from all the opportunities that I had. So I thought, you know, it's only right to repay her through, you know, at least trying my best in education, because I guess you guys will all know that, particularly within African Caribbean communities, education is very highly prized, and something that I think we can often undervalue, in the sense that because it's a commodity that we get for free, we can often take it for granted and not necessarily hold it in such a high esteem as many of many of them having come from countries where education wasn't necessarily free. But in terms of how my education has shaped me, I definitely do feel that I've been the transition from going to a state school to an independent school, and that huge sort of culture shock at the age of 16 granted me the confidence to, in a sense, go into any environment and feel comfortable and not feel intimidated by anyone else. And I feel like in this country, whether we like it or not, people hold educational attainment to such a high regard that a lot of people will essentially judge you based on your past educational experiences. So I've had situations where I've been in certain spaces and I've been asked where I went to school in a very condescending way, and then I go, oh, I'm at Eton, and in a very kind of cheeky, humble way, I go, kind of, what about you? So in a very funny way, it's definitely kind of made me a very kind of well-rounded person. I feel like having met people from all over the world, essentially, I feel like I'm much more culturally aware, and yeah, essentially.
I think just great points from all of you. I just want everyone to consider that a lot of the points have been around you guys becoming more resilient and stronger as people, and then sort of working harder, and it's helped you out. But then just something that Tyrone said in terms of not knowing whether the teacher's actually there to support and help you. I think all educators in this must understand and just consider the Black students in their class, and whether their students are actually feeling like, are my teachers actually here to help me? And I think that just asking yourself that question as a student is problematic in itself. And obviously these young people are speaking about how their experiences, how they've grown from their experiences, but not everyone is able to grow from their experiences, right? Not everyone is able to move positively and go on to do great things. So some of these, I just want you to take away that, especially as educators, that this idea that Black people are struggle to see whether their educators are there to support them, whether they're actually rooting for them in their corner. We hear a lot of people say, oh, my teacher said I'll never amount to nothing, or you could have been this, or and those are not the sort of responses that our students need from us, regardless of their color. I'll just move on to the next question because of time. I'll put so this one here. So what has been your greatest difficulty in education? All right, so this can be just a quick point around potentially the most difficult thing. So it may be something that really affected you negatively, or it could be something that affected you negatively and you used it to spur you on to do something great. What's been your most difficult experience of education? We'll go with Mo.
I think the hardest, I'll say the greatest difficulty in education for me was because I went through my secondary experience. A lot of people were not serious in school. People were making fun in class. They didn't want to learn. So it just made the teacher think of other ways to help motivate other people, to help motivate us to get to where we want to be. However, there being different classes and different situations where, because of our behavior, of how we acted as a class, it affected us individually. I remember when we was in our religious studies class, it was in year 11, a lot of people weren't serious. So the teacher used to make us come in, we don't talk to him, he gives us, we just get notes from the book, we have to read the book and just take notes. And I remember speaking to him, I said, I can't do this because you're not teaching us. Because of behavior, you're focusing more on the behavior rather than actually our education aspects, which as a class, I can understand where he's coming from, but individually it's affecting a lot of us. So that's one thing I'll say.
Definitely, and that's something that, so there's pros to going to a predominantly black school for a black student, is that you're not seen as the minority. Essentially, you're not an outcast within your environment. However, there are still stereotypes placed on groups of black students by teachers, regardless of their race and examples like Mo explained. So there are pros and cons to going to a predominantly black school. Anyone else want to comment on?
I don't mind saying something actually. My greatest difficulty probably would be linked to me actually the transition from A levels to university. As I said, I did go to a state school in Peckham, and now I go to the University of Sussex, which is in Brighton, which is predominantly a white area. So that transition in education, the transition actually the way I have to communicate with individuals from Brighton are actually different, because not everyone's going to be black. Like, black people are the minority in Brighton, if I'm honest. So therefore, the people I lived with on campus, the people that I saw on a regular basis were actually white. So I couldn't actually even have my normal, let's say if I had the normal conversation I have with my friends in London would be the normal conversation I have with my friends in Brighton. Everything's different, everything changes. And that's something I have to just get used to adjusting and becoming more versatile in a sense. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I can relate to. I went to a predominantly black school, and in my first experience of being a minority was going to university like yourself, and a similar experience that I had. It was like a wake up, like, whoa, like I am the minority in the grand scheme of things. Anyone else before I move on?
Yeah. I just want to add, so touching on what you just said, Albert, in terms of the transition, kind of constant transitions between different types and forms of education. I suppose myself, kind of keeping true to myself and keeping true to my values and not compromising on that. Also, I suppose overcoming doubt and ideas of like imposter syndrome, and just kind of thinking, am I here because I've truly earned it, or am I here because I'm filling some kind of diversity quota? But thankfully, I've sort of developed strategies to kind of overcome those things. And I definitely sort of now feel that I'm able to sort of act in a sense as a sort of role model for kind of other particularly young black boys to sort of follow. And I'm always kind of very happy to help out when I get kind of younger guys saying stuff like, oh, can I get advice? I'm applying to so and so. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to see that. It's always something I've found necessary in terms of passing the baton back down and making it a lot easier for those coming after me.
All right, brilliant, and thank you, Josh. Well, I'll do one last question before we move on to our second set of guest speakers. And it sort of links in. Do you have a defining educational moment that changed the trajectory or path of your life? So, is there a defining moment that it was like, yeah, okay, yes, now I have to make something of myself, or because of this? So someone mentioned previously, I think it was just like a parents' evening where you thought, well, now I have to sort of do something on myself because of the struggles of my mother to actually give me these kind of opportunities in itself. So just quickly on this question,
Yeah.
Alex, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I remember vividly. I think I was in year 8 or 9, so this is about 5-6 years ago. Sort of like Josh said, going through that little low-level disruption. I think I got sent out of assembly once, and this is when I was just about to move to Kent. And I remember one of my teachers, Mr. Charlie, he's a black teacher. He sort of brought me into his classroom. He kind of went through the, oh, what are you doing sort of thing. And then he kind of gave me that talk, like, you're a young, bright black man who definitely has a bright future ahead of him. He kind of just, I'll say, dropped me some game actually to know how to navigate this world as a young black man with potential. And even though this was 5-6 years ago, I think about this often, and how that just little 10 minutes he took out of his day to save me from writing lines or something really did resonate me, and I feel like it will stay for me with the rest of my life. So shout out, Mr. Charlie.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And it's crazy how such small moments can actually make such a big difference in young people's lives, and it's just taking that time to have those small moments. Anyone else want to share?
Can I just add another one quickly? I think it was probably in year 9. Also, I don't know why I feel like everything happened in year 9, but I promise I'm not lying. But I had there was an English teacher called Miss Rigby, who essentially was holding these spoken word poetry classes, and I always kind of found poetry as quite lame, and I wasn't really informed that there were like loads of different forms of poetry, like performance poetry, spoken word, as well as sort of the typical page poetry. And then so essentially she had a workshop, and then she essentially got the whole class to write a poem, and then we had the option of performing it. And essentially I just thought about something, wrote about it, and I summoned enough confidence to perform this poem. And essentially after the class, Miss Ruby sort of spoke with me, and she was like, I really like your poem, and I think you should come along to our poetry classes that we have after school. And so I was like, cool, why not? I'll give it a go. And then literally over the course of a year, I really developed as a poet. And essentially we had a spoken word poetry slam where 6 students would be chosen to represent the school at an international poetry competition, fully funded in Washington, DC in 2016. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those winners, and being able to go to, it was over time. So from year 9, and I stuck at poetry for like over a year, etc. So I had this opportunity to go in the next year when I was in either year 10 or 11, to go to America. And going to America for the first time, being in a completely new environment, sort of made me feel that, I guess, the cliche saying, there's more to life than the ends. And it definitely sort of changed my kind of view on things and made me sort of think big. And then from then on, when it came to applying to sixth forms and colleges, I kept that mindset and thought, okay, why limit myself to the schools in my local area? Why not apply to what I perceived as, the best and probably sort of the harder to get into, just because why not, essentially. And I've sort of kept that philosophy going forward when it comes to university as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's funny enough. I actually remember when just first started poetry, and I actually went to the poetry slam. And
yeah, you did. Yeah.
And yeah, he's a great poet. And yeah, he's doing amazing stuff. What just for the time, we're gonna stop there. I'm gonna remove the panel from the live stream. Thank you for answering the question so authentically and so on, so obviously just from the heart and so passionately. We're going to introduce our second speakers from the Docio tuition. Cool. So here is our panel back. So we're gonna go through a couple more questions. I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious of essentially time. So we're gonna go through as many as possible, and then we're gonna hear from our final speaker, and then we'll round up. So we've got quite a lot of questions. So firstly, I'll put this one up. So how have you ever encountered racist actions, discrimination, bias, or comments from your teachers when at school, and how should the scenario change? So if you just as sort of brief, not to rush you or anything, just try to keep it as brief as possible, and just share. So we'll start with Alex on that one.
Two things. So like I initially said, I kind of sort of carried on that get on with it mentality from my parents. So if I did go through that, I sort of suppressed it. And another thing, I don't know if I portrayed myself a certain way, but and this is actually quite a good point that I've seen the discrepancies in treatment of different sort of black characters. So no one really did try to, no one was, I don't want to say brave enough to be, outwardly racist to me, but then I had other classmates who definitely did go through them racist remarks and experiences. So me personally, I haven't, and if I did, I probably suppressed it, which is pretty sad. So yeah.
Okay. Tyrone, do you want to go ahead?
With me again, majority of my life has been spent in London, Peckham, so I haven't really personally encountered any racist actions or discrimination bias towards me, I guess, personally. But like it happens, as I said. So like one time I was cycling, and you know how black people are slightly a bit loud. Let's say they're just talking, and then someone must have shouted, shut up, you black cunts, something like that. And that was very uncalled for, because I was cycling past, I couldn't address the situation, but I was actually so shocked that one person couldn't let people just speak in peace without actually just feeling the type of way, or feeling that they have to be quiet because of their skin color. The way, and if there is racism going on in schools, that needs to change, because everyone needs to be treated equally, everyone needs to be heard, and everyone needs to feel comfortable when they're in a public service such as school and education, because school is free in a sense, and that we should be there to actually learn, be there to achieve the best results we can, and be there comfortably in a sense. So that's really what should happen in a sense.
Kumi?
Back in Brixton, no, but when I was in sixth form, I wouldn't, like I said, like I kind of suppressed it as well. Like I remember one time, I was walking in the corridors, and it sounds dumb as well, but it actually did happen. I was walking in the corridors, and then a white teacher saw me with me, two of my black friends that were there. Bear in mind, there was three black boys, me and my two friends, and there's about 6 black people in the whole year group, right? He comes up to me and my boys, we're carrying our books, and he says, "What you got there, boys? Jollof rice." So obviously, like, like when I heard it, I was thinking in my head, like, is this guy okay? But at the same time, like, I didn't see it as a racist like remark. I just thought he was just trying to make jokes. But at the same time, I was thinking, like, why though? Like was there any need for that? But at the end of the day, I don't know. I saw the light-hearted side of it, but I thought about it properly. After thinking about it properly and talking to someone about it, because you don't usually realize that there's something wrong with something until you actually go to speak to someone about it, and they were like, "Gee, like if that happened in a workplace, that person could get in a lot of trouble." So, like, yeah, that's the only racial or kind of discriminative, what's it called, incident I can recall. Anything else was like from like students, but I'll be like I said, they're not really brave to say it to your face. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's more behind your back. So yeah.
Thank you. I
know of sort of several different scenarios, particularly sort of at boarding school, and having heard from other sort of black students that in similar sort of environments of, being told to sort of not always kind of be in a group of black students because other students might find it intimidating. But I've always found that very interesting, because it's like these are my friends. Like, would you want me to do? So that's that links to the fact that I mentioned earlier about the way blackness is often politicized and seen as somehow threatening. I remember a teacher once, so I was wearing a dashiki, and I think this teacher meant this as a compliment, but he told me I was looking very, very ethnic. So my sister just repeated it because I've told her the story before. But and it's just that kind of sort of comments like that, and I think, you know, I'm sure he didn't mean it in a way that was meant to be offensive, etc. But you know, I've had so few encounters with maybe people like myself, or is your dress style kind of that limited to maybe you have never seen something like a dashiki before? I guess none of which is his fault, but you know, certain experiences that I kind of have to question and think, you know, is this racist, or is this pure ignorance? And I feel like that's a burden that we kind of have to bear as black people.
Yeah, and then Mohammed.
And sort of similarly with hairstyles as well.
I was there.
Yeah.
I personally haven't encountered.
Yeah, go on, Mo.
Okay, cool. I said I personally haven't encountered any racism or discrimination, but I will say is after taking exams for my school and stuff in secondary school, I remember I was in like set 3, but then I had to work my way up. I think I was the only one that moved sets. I remember people moving from set 2 to 1 and 1 to 2, but I remember being like set 3 and then moving to set 1 over the period of like 2 years in school. So it's funny how schools actually predict people or try to put people down, because if you think about it, for example, when you're doing maths GCSE, there's foundation and there's higher tier, and how the system works is they're practically failing students. So I couldn't be one of them. So I don't know. I think that's something that could be.
Okay, and just linked in with the comments, some people mentioned suppressing sort of things that happened within education. It sort of covers 2 questions. So there's another question that was like, in hindsight, when you look back, do you see some things and sort of think, well, actually that was actually a racist incident, but at the time I wasn't sort of, whether it was educated enough or aware of it, or just sort of brushed it off as you mentioned. So in hindsight, when you look at some of your experiences, do you feel like, well, actually, I probably should have done something about that?
Yeah. So first thing, the incident that Kumi was talking about, I remember he spoke to me first, seeming that I went to a grammar school in Kent, and I was actually like, to him, I was like, you know, no, bro, like he was probably just ignorant. I don't think he really meant it in an offensive way. But as I've gone through that sort of stage in my life where I've stopped suppressing it and I've started to address it, I feel like that was a problematic statement. Secondly, another thing that a lot of us black people went through, I see one of my friends in the comment section there, going to a grammar school predominantly with mainly white people, you tend to sort of stick to the people who you can relate to more, and that's black people. And I remember kind of just hanging around in the sixth form common area, and every single time we was in the common area together, you know, a head of department would come over and tell us to keep the noise down, or tell us to, you know, keep it quiet. But then on the other side of it, you know, all these white people, sorry, I'm being so blunt about it, but all the white people are making way much more noise than us. And it's like every time we sort of gather around and speak, it seems like there's a problem. So that's a huge issue that I feel like a lot of schools need to address, sort of racial bias, and yeah, ridiculous stuff.
All right, just because of time, and I want obviously to give our final speaker enough time, I'm going to ask 2 more questions. The first one is directed at Alex, and then the second one is directed at Josh. If you could just answer as briefly, as clearly but briefly as possible. So for you, Alex, how was your experience as an intern? Did you experience any difficulties with race?
So a bit of background. So I'm in a cohort of about 14 people. from the ages of around 19 to 24, like master students, and there's only 3 of us. And funnily enough, I thought that was really good compared to
By
the
3 of us,
space.
you mean 3 black people?
Yeah, 3 black students, and funnily enough, I thought that was quite good compared to sort of firms that I've been to, where there's 3 black students but 40 students overall. Um, so, and another important thing I need to mention is that it's being done remotely, so on my computer, and I do feel like because of that, I have experienced less microaggressions, because your usual interactions with some uneducated and ignorant white people, they'd say a comment like that jollof rice comment that Kumi said, that's sort of the office banner you probably meet face to face. But yeah, but I did actually notice something. Out of all of the interns, funnily enough, I was the only one who was asked to provide a testimony. Um, there's 2 things here. Maybe this is my thought process. Are they doing it to kind of tick off that diversity hire thing, or to show that as a firm we recruit young black interns? And I don't know. And it's kind of that tokenization thing, and it kind of delved in deeper to that imposter syndrome that I sort of felt in the beginning. So yeah.
Okay, and then just I know Josh mentioned a bit previously earlier on where it was like you're not quite sure whether you're getting something because you're just it's the sort of they value you and you're respected and you deserve that position, or you're getting it because of the tokenism of it, and you're that the representation for them, you're that black sort of figurehead for them, or that so there's elements of, for black people or black young people, not understanding or not knowing whether they're getting something because they deserve it, or they're getting something because they tick a box, and then that's important to consider. So Josh, for you, I know you could probably speak quite a lot about this question, but try and keep it as brief as possible. Did you ever feel socially disconnected with the pupils or staff members of Eton College, given the fact that you're black and previously state educated? Someone is doing something in the background.
Yeah, that's cracking a bit. But yeah, that's a really, really good question. I feel like, yeah, I mean, there were definitely times I did feel socially disconnected, just kind of being away from the community I was used to, physically kind of being away. Also, I remember speaking to sort of certain people about certain topics, like, I mean, I say people, I mean both students and teachers. Certain topics like knife crime, for example, just stuff that I'd grown up kind of with going on around me, and the complete ignorance to these issues as if they didn't actually exist, and essentially they didn't for these people, because a lot of them were essentially shielded from all of this stuff. And in a sense, I also felt disconnected from the fact that at the end of term I'd go home to my essentially a council estate in southeast London, and then many of these other students would go home to their stately homes, and there was a sort of feeling that I'm never sort of quite gonna be able to kind of fully understand these people, and these people are never gonna fully understand me. But that was somewhat dispelled as I kind of went on to my second year, and I kind of feel like over time I realized that many other similarities between us, common interests, aims, goals in life that bring us together, in things that separate us essentially. And going on to the second part of the question, given the fact that you're black and previously state educated, I think it's a misconception that everyone that goes to Eton is white, and no one prior to coming has been state educated. I think statistically, the student body at Eton is somewhat reflective of the population, contrary to popular belief. So so last year while I was there, the BAME population, a term I don't necessarily like, but the BAME population was about 15%, and according to the last census in 2011, which is obviously quite outdated, it was 14%. So in that sense, the student body is quite reflective of society more generally. But when it comes to class, I think that's a very different conversation. The teacher body didn't reflect that at all. Out of about 200 teachers, there were about 3 teachers of ethnic minority backgrounds, and that was often quite tricky because you often look up to teachers and other people in power as, you often look up to teachers as people in power. So seeing such a lack of people in power did feel very, I guess maybe isolating is the word. And especially when it came to, wanting to speak with someone in authority about an experience that you've had, there wasn't really anyone to do that. And no one really could relate to my personal experience. And that's something I found quite tricky.
Okay. Thank you for sharing with that. I think a key just on your last point there is that representation does matter. And especially at different stages of education and not just state education, whether it's private, whether it's grammar, like just representation matters across the board. I'm gonna remove the panel now and then welcome our third and final speaker, Ambient. I'm gonna bring back the panel. We've lost Mohammed, but that's fine. We've got our 4 other panelists, and we're just going to finish off now. So we're going to start to round up. I'm going to ask a couple more questions. 2 more questions to end with. And the first question is this one here. Who are your visible role models? So who are people that you look up to, or people that you would say have been or are role models in your life? Let's start with Tyrone.
So if I'm honest, my visible role model was my dad. So it's a bit of feedback. My visible role model is my dad, actually, because he's always told me that I should actually think outside the box. I should strive hard. I should do well. I should always be myself and just always aim for the finishing line. It's all about wanting to win, in a sense. So it's all about wanting to do your best, always wanting to survive, or not survive, sorry, to succeed, sorry. So that's who my role model is, my dad.
Thank you. What about yourself, Josh?
Sorry, I thought it was me. Most definitely my biggest role model is my mum, hands down. Just in terms of the way she inspires me on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the hurdles that she's had to overcome, and that sort of drive has definitely been instilled in myself and my 3 other siblings. Another role model for me is one of my mentors, a guy called Lord Hastings, and his journey from essentially being a teacher. Actually, that's how he started, and sort of now being one of the chairman at UNICEF and being a member of the House of Lords as a black man. It just sort of goes to show that with drive and determination, there's nothing that you can't reach in this country. Especially, also a bit of luck helps a lot. But essentially, having those qualities helps a lot. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yourself, Kumi?
I've got quite a few role models. Like my friends, I've got my friends. Without sounding cliche, I can't look at you as a role model because I remember, like, some of you may not know that Albert started a football team, Crawford FC. In year 8.
So we all played for it, right?
Yeah, we all play for them. If you don't know,
that's how we all came together. If you didn't
literally,
know.
out of all of these guys here, my technical ability was probably the most lacking. I'll be real. And I remember, I don't know if Albert remembers this, but he took me like to private sessions and worked on my touch for hours and hours until I could finally touch the ball properly. And I started every game, and I broke into my school football team after that as well. So obviously, the patience that he had with me, obviously the initiatives to start this BAME thing, and I've literally seen Albert go from 6th form to working where he is now. So, and obviously my dad, some of my friends as well, like the hard work I see from my friends, like it motivates me because we're all around the same age, we're doing the same thing. So yeah, I'd say that's those. All my friends are my role models, and anyone that's just doing something positive, I look up to a lot of people. Yeah.
Yourself, Alex?
So 2 people sort of come to mind. It sounds cliche again, but if you didn't know, me and Albert grew up on the same council estate, and to be honest with you, he was probably the only positive influence that I saw coming out of that estate, and sort of seeing his sort of transition to becoming.
You guys will make me blush. You have to come on screen.
No, honestly though, seeing you as probably the only positive person in the end, should I say, really did inspire me. Another person was my older cousin James. So he was probably the only male cousin. I have an older brother. He was the only male cousin that actually went to university, and now he's been sort of my mentor. And he's a stockbroker, and I want to get into financial education, and it sort of brings in the importance of a mentor because he's a stockbroker and I want to get into sort of financial services. I'm sort of trying to think that imagine if he went on to be a doctor. I'd probably want to go on to study medicine at university. So these sort of role models are important, and listen to what the guests were saying. I feel like and teachers and parents as well. I feel like it's really good if you got your child a mentor, or your students a mentor, someone who they can look up to. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you guys. Just you touched on mentoring. Just to end, mentoring is something that I'm a big advocate for in schools, outside of schools. So if anyone is interested, anyone that's engaged or tuned in or interested in finding a mentor or wants to develop mentoring within their school or within their youth work or whatever it is they do, or they're looking for a mentor for their child, please do obviously get in touch with me, and I'll be able to point you in the right direction or help you out myself. So mentoring is something that I think is hugely important for young people. And then just lastly, this before we add this guest speakers back into it, this last question is here. So what message do you want attendees of this event to spread out going forward beyond the event?
So I'd start off. I feel like the main message, like I just said, mentorship, especially for young Black males, in and around the community that I grew up in, is crucial. And I'd even go on to say more important than what we learn in school, because as long as you have someone who you can see who's positive and who can help direct you to the right opportunities and who you can learn from, I feel like that's crucial in the development of young Black men.
I'll go on, please.
No, you go first, man.
All right, cool. I think I definitely want sort of everyone to kind of to know that teaching, the value of teaching, and the fact that we need more Black people to consider going into teaching. I feel like Albert is a great example of this. This is the power that Black teachers can have, and the fact that they often go far beyond their sort of normal remit to sort of cater for the needs and essentially the needs of young black children. And I think we can all agree that teaching is an underpaid and overworked profession. But I feel like I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon, but I do definitely feel that a lot of us should consider teaching as a profession. And I know a lot of us have sort of constraints, being a lot of times second generation migrants, and feeling the urge to provide for our families, etc. But I'm sure there is progression in teaching, and that 25K salary will increase at some point. But just definitely do consider and teaching. It doesn't have to be in a formal setting. Just kind of passing on knowledge and wisdom to the next generation, essentially, and also the people around you, your friends, and etc.
Can I add to what Josh was saying? So I was going to say it's all about trying to be positive and stepping out your comfort zone. Forget where you're from, forget your skin color, forgetting everything. Just if you see an opportunity and you feel like, well, I might actually enjoy this in 5 years' time, just seize it now. Why not? Go to that work experience, go to that internship, do something different, do something that might change your life in a sense. That's what I want to say.
Brilliant. And then finally, Kumi.
Building up to what Tyrone said, never ever feel like you're some sort of beg. Networking is so important. There's so many opportunities I've missed out on because I never opened my mouth, because I never went to that's someone that could have been my mentor. So many things I've missed out on. Definitely, always get out of your comfort zone. The comfort zone is where lazy people are. Always step out of your comfort zone, and also do the most. So attend every club, attend every extracurricular, apply for every internship. It may seem long and tedious at times, but I swear it's worth it in the end, because the people I've been lucky to meet and the people that everyone on the panel here has been lucky to meet, I'm sure they can tell you that they've met people that have and can change their life forever. So yeah, that's what I can say.
Okay, thank you guys. I'm just gonna add our two guest speakers into the stream as well. Hello, who's that?
Oh no, you're gonna no. I was just gonna say quick. Will there be a chance to plug a couple of things? But
yeah, 100%. So we'll finish off that. I'm gonna add obviously Children's Black History, Granville back in, and then Canis, Esther back in, and we've got two questions that we're gonna. That's our final, guys. I promise, final two questions. And then we'll just leave an opportunity for everyone to sort of plug themselves and sort of get final comments before we finish and go away and enjoy our evening. I'm missing football at the moment, so you know.
Word.
So Children's Black History. So Granville, what do you think needs to be taught in schools currently for Black History?
That's a very, it's a big question. I think without actually sounding, I don't know if the right word is confrontational, but the truth would be a start in terms of history. So, but if I can kind of categorize it, I think I could kind of categorize it to four things that I think are very important. Some people might call it prehistory, but the origins of humankind. I think that's something that I've kind of self-educated myself about. History, overwhelming historical evidence shows that the first inhabitant of Europe was the Grimaldi man, who was a migrating black person from Africa, of which we're all descendants of. So that for me would be really powerful because it will completely dispel the myth of white people belonging in Europe and black people belong in Africa. And I think that would completely reshape people's perspective of race and the kind of geographical side of things in terms of pigeonholing people to particular areas of the world. I think secondly, pre-colonial Africa is really, really important. So when I say pre-colonial Africa, I mean before Europeans arrived to that region, before the Atlantic slave trade, which again shows in history overwhelming evidence that there were kingdoms, evidence of monarchies, fully functioning kingdoms. And again, it dispels the myth that there were no kings and queens of Africa. There were no actual kingdoms or civilizations there, which I think a lot of people grow up believing. I think thirdly, there needs to be more of a varied or a variety of black icons that have shaped modern society. Now, I'm not taking away, from Harriet Tubman to Saint Louverture, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the freedom fighters and the civil rights activists, but that is a history of oppression and a history of struggle, when actually we really want to also be incorporating a history of achievement, success, and inspiration. All the inventors, the writers that we can incorporate into that. And I think lastly, Black British history, some of the names that I mentioned earlier that I touched upon, and also periods of history, contributions that were made for example, the contribution of ethnic minorities in the World War conflicts, as well as the Windrush generation, when people from the Caribbean came to this country to rebuild this country after the World War conflict. So I think if I can kind of just summarize it, I would say the origins of humankind, the pre-colonial Africa, a more varied or variety of black icons other than just freedom fighters, and also much more emphasis on British black history.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Can I just add something quickly? So as a black student, all I remember being taught is black people struggling. So what you've just said there is extremely important. Like all I remember is Kunta Kinte, Martin Luther King, and sort of black people being seen as low in society. So being taught our history, pre-colonialization and stuff like that is extremely key. So,
yeah, I would agree. That's probably why I hated history, is because we were having to write so much about things that I didn't even care about. It definitely affects people's engagement in subjects. Definitely when they can sort of look at things and it's inspiring them, or it's engaging them, and it's the whole picture. It's the truth, like you say, teaching the truth essentially, and representing all of history, not just a small part or a fragment of history. So thank you for sharing that. And once again, okay, we could keep going until 9 o'clock here, but no, go on.
I know.
Go on quickly
Just
before we
I'll
go to the
say
last.
there, in terms of a little secret, I didn't like history when I was at school. I didn't like it at all. I didn't enjoy it, and a lot of it was because I just didn't really see the relevance of a lot of the curriculum-based, topics that we studied. My love of history came from my father. God bless his soul. He was very passionate about history. He was very passionate about Black history. In terms of the civil rights movement, I'll be honest, he taught me a lot about the Atlantic slave trade. He taught me a lot, being from a Caribbean descent, that our history is in Africa. So he taught me a lot about the Atlantic slave trade. He taught me a lot about the civil rights movement. We had pictures on the wall, of all the freedom fighters. So that's really where that passion for history came from. It wasn't actually from school. So once I had gone to university and I had a degree in politics and history, I would often discuss that with my dad. And I thought, what better way than to actually, teach history. But as a teacher, it was very frustrating. Because I would remember even teaching, and this was no fault of the school, this was no fault of the professionals that worked within that school. This comes from the top, it comes from government, in that I would teach a whole topic, a whole syllabus, on the World War I and the World War II conflict, and at no point will they talk about the contribution of ethnic minorities during that time. So I would sometimes rush through. If I was teaching a class and they were of a very high ability, sometimes we would get through the curriculum quicker. And sometimes I would actually just make my own lessons to kind of give them a different perspective of those topics. So it's really, really important. Really, really important that we can kind of reshape education moving forward.
Definitely. Final question for Esther from Canis. I know we spoke about this question and it is it's a large question with different points to it, and obviously you don't have very much time. I'm conscious of that we've overrun massively. I'm thankful to everyone that's still tuned in. So thank you for staying with us, and thank you for still engaging. But Esther, just as simply or as briefly as possible, do you agree that BAME parents need to prioritize the education of their children, insisting on completion of in-depth study, extracurricular activities, and outstanding behavior at school? I know some of the panelists have touched on little bits of this throughout, but Esther, if you could sort of summarize and give us a little ending.
Yeah, I think I'll just try and take each of those in turn. So in terms of prioritizing the education of their children, I would say yes. But I just want to clarify that I deem education to be any form of interaction that kind of imparts, whether it be knowledge, wisdom, skills, habits, any of those things. That is education. So what we are doing now is an educational experience. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the confines of a classroom between a qualified teacher and a student. But yeah, I do think that parents should prioritize their children's education. Completion of in-depth study, I think that's relative, what you mean by in-depth study, but I do think it is important, as I said earlier, to encourage children to value hard work and consistency, not just for the sake of their education, but simply because as a human being who lives in society, those are things that will get you very far. And that's basically how we work cooperatively. So it's important to understand the significance of working hard and doing so in a consistent manner. Extracurricular activities are something that I really do try to plug as much as possible. It's very important for us to teach our children skills outside of what the school teaches them, because school teaches you a bunch of things that you need to know and a bunch of things that you don't really need to know. So I think it's important to make sure that your child's education, their formal education, is supplemented with extra education. So for example, can your child cook? Can they clean? Do they work well with other children? Have they got good social skills? Are they good with finances? All of these things. Do they know about their own family's history, for example? Do they know about their family's roots pre-migration and your journey to the UK? Do they know about those things? So I would say those types of extracurricular activities, along with the arts, so whether it be performing arts, music, dance, drama, singing, poetry, all of these things, they're all very important. It's very important to make sure your child has at least 1 or 2 hobbies outside of school, not just because, you know, they might become a famous concert pianist, but psychologically it's good for your brain. It's good for the brain plasticity when they're growing up, for them to be able to be good at multiple different things. And it's good for their confidence as well. And in terms of behavior, I think as somebody who works across multiple different schools, I worked in about 30 or 40 schools, behavior, especially in Black students, is always, I would take it with a pinch of salt. As a child, my mum's watching this right now. She knows that I was always told that I could do better if I just stopped talking. But that stop talking was always labeled as Esther is disruptive. Esther is disruptive. And it's even the wording that we use to describe Black students, sometimes it can come across as quite negative. And it's quite a shame, to be honest. But I think ultimately, I would say, yes, parents do need to prioritize their children's educational development. So don't just kind of box into school, and support their holistic development. So not just education, it needs to be outside of that, teach them life skills as well.
Esther, thank you. That's a very good response in terms of brief, clear, and sort of straight to the point. And so thank you for that. Guys, thank you for joining us. Panel members, thank you for being here. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for sharing your experiences so honestly. Guest speakers, thank you for sort of just obviously sharing what you do in terms of your organizations, giving us the actionable points, which was a key thing for me in terms of giving people things to take away and or sort of get involved with your projects or how they can support or things that they could do within their within their sort of lives, whether it's education, whether it's as parents, whether it's as students. So thank you all for being here. Before we end, if you just want to sort of plug yourself, so share anything that you're doing, anything that people get involved with, just one last time before we end. We'll start with go on, Alex, if you've got anything you want to share.
Honestly, no, I'm a bit of a private person, so you can't really catch me on any sort of social medias. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you wanted to discuss anything with me further on, though. So I'm on LinkedIn at Alex Cisse. So
Alex Cisse on LinkedIn. Kumi, anything you want to share?
Nah. Just LinkedIn. My name's Kumi Odesanya on LinkedIn.
Okay, Kumi Odesanya, LinkedIn. Tyrone, anything you want to share about what you do, your work with ACS?
Just briefly, that I'm president of the ACS Society at my university, so the University of Sussex, that's in Brighton. Work hasn't really started yet due to the whole pandemic thing. But there's been a lot of planning of how we're going to tackle events for the future, how to tackle racism in clubs. So that's some work that's going to be coming up maybe in September, October. So hopefully I'll publish something on our Sussex socials. And yeah, if you want to get me, just get me on my LinkedIn, Tyrone Kodwa. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then Josh.
So I think it's cut out. Can you hear me?
No, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So a couple of things I want to plug. So Eton, my former school, have literally last week opened applications for a brand new scholarship called the Orwell Award, which is aimed at students currently in year 10 going into year 11. So they have the opportunity to apply to that, and essentially it's a fully funded place at the sixth form. I think there's a huge emphasis has been placed on the fact that we're not aiming at fully polished students, straight A students. Literally, it's sort of anyone who is kind of interested in benefiting from a boarding environment, who's open to new opportunities. So you can find out more about that at Eton College Orwell Award, or just go on the website and look for the Orwell Award. Also, there's this new scheme that I'm helping to create at Cambridge University called AIM Cambridge. AIM stands for Access, Inspire, Mobilize, and essentially it's targeted at students from minority ethnic communities who have lower chance of getting into the university, and essentially we're trying to help them make the most informed application through mentoring, and also just general kind of advice. You can follow us at aim.cambridge. We've also got LinkedIn, and it's AIM Cambridge as well on there, lowercase. And then Albert touched on mentoring, that there's a platform that I actually found one of my mentors from called Elimu Mentoring, and that's ELIMU Mentoring on Instagram. And essentially, if you're age 16 to 25, you can sign up and state your interest, and you'll be paired with a mentor. And this is all free. Specifically at my college at Cambridge, I'm setting up a BAME mentorship program called Be a Mentor. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, which is Josh Adeyemi, that's Adeyemi, I'll be posting about all of that stuff on there. So yeah, that's all from me.
So quite a lot from Josh and a bit from Tyrone. From the panel members, please, if you can just in the comments, or if you just tune in and comment some of those information so that people have access to it, so they can actually see it, because obviously, especially from yourself, Josh, there's quite a lot there. I'm not sure if people are able to catch it, and so if you could just comment it so that people can actually see it and have access to it. Mr. Graham.
For me, I just want to end really in saying, please do go away. Like I say, the platform at the moment is being created. A lot of work is going on behind the scenes in terms of like historical content and getting that all together. So really and truly, at this point, it would be just really good for you guys to go to our social media accounts. Very easy to find. I can see even whilst this has been going on that we've had quite a few new followers on our social media platforms, and that's all I can encourage really, people to go and find out, from our Instagram, our Twitter, and our Facebook account. The content that we are producing, and it will give you an insight in terms of what the learning platform will look like, and the periods of history and the icons that we'll be covering on the platform. If you wish to volunteer, you want to get involved, or you just want to have a conversation about what we're doing and how you can help, feel free to just drop us a message via DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And that's it really. Lastly, I would just like obviously to say a massive thank you to you, Albert, for obviously putting this together. Obviously as an ex-pupil of mine, it was a great honor when you actually reached out to me and wanted me to be a part of this. I didn't even have to think twice, to be honest. I think you're an amazing inspiration. You were a fantastic pupil when you were in school, and you've literally just, you've left school and you've just gone on to just do amazing things, not just for yourself, but, for your community. So Black Youth Panel is exactly what's needed in terms of having open conversations about, racism, inequality, and education. So I know you keep thanking us, but I'd just like to thank you.
Thank you, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, Esther, Canis, anything you want to share or anything?
Just quickly, similar to Mr. Williams, please follow us on Twitter, Instagram. We're also on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. Check out our website. It's www.canice.uk. That's our website. We're looking for volunteers. We are also fundraising on GoFundMe. And I think kind of just last kind of words of wisdom is just, take care of yourselves, look after your families, your children. As I said before, we are in this together. If you are going through something, please don't suffer on your own. If you don't feel confident enough to, speak to someone at your child's school or at your workplace, there are, organizations such as us and, all the great people that are here today that can support you. So please do reach out to us, even if it is on social media, and we'll find a way to work together.
Thank you. And then lastly, I'll just put up here anyone that so the information that Josh shared, it's Josh Adeyemi on LinkedIn, and those are the Instagram pages if anyone wanted to quickly take a picture or quickly follow. Other than that, panel members, thank you. It's been great having you and sharing your experiences. I understand obviously it's been time has sort of, it's been a struggle, so we haven't been able to get through as many questions as I would have hoped. There's a couple of things that some of you wanted to touch on beyond education and society. It may call for another panel. It may call for another event to talk about more wider issues in the future. But thank you for joining us, guest speakers. Thank you for imparting your wisdom and sharing your experiences and sharing your knowledge. Everyone, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure hosting this. Stay tuned. Obviously, follow us on Twitter, Instagram. It's BAME WeTeach. As I said in the beginning, we plan on extending this into at least a 3-part series where we'll have a female panel and then a further sort of platform for educators and organizations to speak a little bit more on what they do and share a little bit more, and provide actionable things to take away for young people, for education, for parents, for teachers, etc. So thank you guys. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. And it's been a pleasure.
Albert, before you go,
yes.
Obviously, being the very humble guy you are, I know you're going to want to deflect the praise away from yourself, but just a very big thank you to you for setting this all up, and all the logistics behind it, getting us all together. Now we truly appreciate and value all your work, and it's been great. It's been a pleasure being involved for us all, I'm sure.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you.
On the panel.
Thank you. Take care, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Have a good evening, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.